Alex, welcome to hashtag Mental Health Day.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, listen, the first thing I have to do at Peace One Day is thank you, because without JAAQ, this conversation, this broadcast wouldn't be happening. You enabled it, and I'm really grateful to you, Alex.
We're thrilled to be part of it. You know, this is a huge thing for us. This day is obviously critical on our calendar. Talking about this stuff is just so important. So no, it's honestly, it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you, Alex, to you and all your team. So the first thing I want to ask you, Alex, is could you tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey to this point?
Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur through and through in my kind of work life. I built a business called JAAQ, which was a social media marketing platform. Like many entrepreneurs, that was my life for like 10 years. So it was my life, my personality. You know, I put so much energy and time into that entity. And that resulted in a great outcome. Actually, I ended up, selling that business to Adobe, and I had 3 incredible years at Adobe as part of that process. And there's a whole long story around that. But the interesting reason why I'm here and why I'm running JAAQ today is that within that process, whether it was that 10-year journey from day one through to the end of it, if you like, what I never really was conscious of or understanding of was like my mental health and mental well-being throughout it. I almost paid no attention to that in reality. And that came with, great amounts of like energy and, enthusiasm to build a business. But actually, as that kind of journey and that chapter came to an end, I actually had a really challenging year of identity loss. I had some family stuff happen in that period, which was a huge challenge, some changes in my life in general. And I actually had depression for a year. And I had no idea, I had no idea what it was about. For me, I was just feeling weird and down and, really, really not in a good place for about a year. And for someone who's high energy, entrepreneurial, it was like an alien feeling to me, So I became very, very passionate about understanding mental health, understanding, what gets you to an outcome being, recovery of some sort, basically, depending on what you've gone through as quickly as possible, and equipping people with the knowledge and the information on how to do that. And so I met JAAQ as a business about a year ago, and I just saw the platform. And, like many people that have seen JAAQ, just wished I had access to that sooner, democratizing access to mental health stories, the kind of clinical stories that we tell to understand what's going on as you go through these things as an individual. So I was thrilled at the chance to learn about the business and get involved in it. And actually now so privileged to be kind of growing it in this stage as we kind of go through, our view of like global scale to really help tackle this problem and these challenges around mental health and well-being. So that's how I got here. And, it's so passionate to me to do this well.
It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story, and the opportunity and the possibilities for you are obviously endless. I mean, given people's access to technology is growing so fast, and it's, most of the world now. So, we wish you the very best on the journey. I want to ask you, in terms of the things that are influencing our mental health, I'm struggling a little bit, Alex, myself, when I see everything going on in Gaza or Sudan or Ukraine, or I look at the planet situation and I look at the people who are refugees, and I look at the flags in my country, and I'm just trying to make sense of it all. And I'm struggling. It's a struggle, right? Quite honestly, to kind of, be in this world. And I wonder what kind of impact all of this is having on mental health, do you think, where we are at this point in our history?
Yeah, I think we're actually at unfortunately, one of the peak times for almost the worst part of this journey, if you like, of human consciousness and understanding of mental health and well-being. And I don't mean that there's no opportunity to fix that and play a role in improving that. That's not a permanent state. But given, like you say, where the world is in terms of whether it's war, whether it's the news cycle, whether it's the economy, the cycles we go through in life, and then also, in addition to that, the volume of content we are, rightly or wrongly exposed to on a daily basis, which was just not physically possible 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, which now actually is just, in our lives every single day, with all of these tragedies that are happening across the world. And also, not just tragedy stuff, like just, stuff, right? Just random stuff that pops up in our feeds. And so the human mind is not equipped, from studies we've done and studies we've seen with third parties, to deal with the absolute knowledge overload and information overload that we all see, probably within the last hour, if you really looked at you and I's phone, for example, just scrolling through stuff. So think about anyone else doing that. And in addition to that, the world is in a very challenging place, as you say. So The downside of this, if you like, is that human beings have never had to actually deal with as much literally in the course of a day, which can be extremely negative and extremely challenging. But the upside, and the way I see it as the opportunity, is that we're probably at peak interest in this as a result of all of these challenges. So I think we're at peak interest in mental health and well-being, being if I've got a problem like an addiction or something like that, I've got more tools than ever before to kind of work out how to overcome that challenge. If I'm just intrigued about sleep and diet and exercise and running, for example, how does that impact my mental well-being? If I want to explore subjects that I've never really thought about, how does my mind work? You know, what actually chemically goes on if I go through something, or if I feel great, what are the endorphin rushes, and what does that really mean for my mind, for example? You know, we've never been in a more opportunistic place to actually understand what is going on in our brain. And for me, that's what I really think about, you know, the health of the human mind and how we manage that, because it's an ever ongoing thing, is something that's really important to actually cracking that. And so to your point, I just think that, you know, the challenges are definitely there, but as an optimist, which I am internally an optimist, and as an entrepreneur who really wants to use technology for a force for good, you know, I think we've got more tools within our toolbox to actually start to solve these problems and help humanity into the next stage of what we do here. So I'm really actually excited about, you know, the opportunity to play a really positive role in the world with our mental health and well-being, and really push this subject forward, as well as dealing with the challenges that we face every day, to your point.
It's amazing to hear you speak, Alex. You're sort of, well, look, your wisdom and your success as a business person couldn't be better for JAAQ. But your sort of knowledge of around the issue and your personal story, I mean, it's, you know, you're incredibly eloquent and passionate about it, and it's great. And, you know, there is a real opportunity here, and for JAAQ and for everybody out there. So let's get into JAAQ then, as a nice segue in there. So tell us about JAAQ. How do we access it? What does it do? Over to you.
Yeah, so JAAQ is, in business terms, or how we phrase it, it's an early intervention, mental well-being and mental health platform. What does that really mean? Like, early intervention is a phrase in kind of clinical and medical settings where if you can catch people really early in the kind of funnel, the way I think about it, of mental health and well-being and how human beings go through stuff. So we really think about, actually, like I said, when you're first intrigued about a topic, when your curiosity peaks around, my attention span's quite low, or I feel really stressed and actually I can't get myself out of this funk, or, you know, exercise, why do I feel so good after exercise? You know, those kind of topics, but also much bigger challenges like, you know, something awful like a suicide in the family, or you face a really bad period of depression, or, you know, something that affects you much more impactfully than kind of, let's say, like an anxiety on a daily basis, etc. These are all things that, you know, with the right content, the right knowledge, what we think of as almost like infotainment and education, with the right stories up front that you can actually relate to, that you will really watch and understand. If we can build the internal mind muscle of what these things are, either before they happen, really early as they might happen or occur to you, or even as you're going through it, you know, potentially, we can basically get you to, one, just understand that, firstly, you're not alone. You know, that's a really big part of our journey, that everyone will go through something like this in their life. And that is a huge part of just understanding that you're not going through that trouble, firstly, on your own. Two, there's an engagement piece. So we have a huge portfolio of celebrities, athletes, musicians, etc., as well as literally the world's leading clinicians on our platform, totally accessible for free. So you can say, say your favorite athlete is talking about a challenge that they went through, and you watch that, you go, well, hang on a minute. You know, if someone like that, you know, that I look up to goes through that, and I do too, I don't even need to explain that. There's an instantaneous connection there that, again, you're not on your own, and actually gives you hope that you can go through that challenge, for example, and see something on the other side. In addition to that, the clinician view is super important. So actually someone can sit there, and not in a leaflet and not in a text or a long based like Word article, someone can literally explain to you, like I'm explaining to you now, well, what happens if you go through an anxiety attack? Why does breath work calm you down? I even feel calmer just speaking more slowly. How do I slow myself down in that scenario? And so we've got this huge kind of library of content that people can access for free. We partner with brands, with health insurance, with hospitals, with third-party apps, etc., to embed that content into all these different environments. And our goal really is, like I say, to almost like collectively improve the knowledge and mind muscle of all of these different topics, so that again, if you're about to go through something, if you're going through something, or actually if you're just curious, we can really build in that resilience, that understanding, that education, so you will, one, just feel better. We really think about, honestly, as a score of just literally feeling better. And two, actually, if you need to go down what in medical terms is called a pathway, you will go down the right one much faster because you actually understand this stuff yourself. And I'm a lived experience of this, Jeremy. Like literally, I went through something. It took me 6 months to understand what it was. It then took me another 6 months to actually go through what I would call recovery. And it could have taken, I think less than half the time, but my understanding was just zero. So I had to start from scratch. Whereas if I could have watched a video for 4 minutes about what I was going through and been like, that is me, imagine how much faster I could have decided to take action against it. So I'm hugely passionate about it, as you can tell. And what we've really identified with all of our studies, so we do a lot of clinical studies, kind of really in-depth work about this, is that those first steps are critical in your journey in around mental health and well-being. So we're super passionate about getting this kind of proposition, our content, etc., out to the world as far and wide as possible.
Amazing, Alex. So JAAQ, just ask a question. I mean, that's your whole point. If you could have asked a question early on, you would have saved a lot of time, and that could have had, a massive impact, on your life and your ability to get through something. So yeah, incredibly important work, and obviously, wish you the very best with it. I want to ask you two more things. I want to ask, firstly, do you think that like kind of global peace, I mean, what's going on between countries, there's a war, there's trauma. I mean, and if you can't get through that, then the anger holds. Do you think that the things that are going on in our community, the way in which we're treating our planet, do you think that in order for us to be able to resolve some of those issues, we need to find inner peace first?
Oh, without question. Yeah, without question. I mean, if you look at the complexities behind some of the things you've said, be it war, be it that kind of topic, like on a nation level, whether it's the leader, whether it's the kind of team underneath that leader, and then the population of that country, for example, and then you relate it against, like you say, a war, for example, or just a tragedy in a nation, this all comes from individuals, that a lot of this stuff is an action, it's a decision to do something, it doesn't come from nothing in reality. And so as an individual, and I think about this in every context in my own life, right? If I feel level set, it's not just good, if I feel level set, clarity of thinking, have I, engaged my community of people that I respect, know, around me? Have I basically got to the point where I understand myself and my motivators and really what impact I have on the world? If I then create, like you say, like inner peace, which I don't think is like a state, I think it's something you'd have to manage as an individual, as we all do. I make better decisions. I relate to people around me more. I think through the consequences of my actions substantially more than I would without that feeling of inner peace, effectively, or inner mindfulness, however you want to phrase it. And so, truth be told, a lot of the reasons around a lot of these things that would be happens do come down to individuals and what actions they choose to take. And actually, if you don't feel inner peace and you don't feel inner clarity as to who you are and what you're doing, and you've validated this with people that you trust, how do you make good decisions? How do you come to the right conclusions? How do you operate in a peaceful life? And I think, with what you do, Jeremy, the way I think about the world, I can't fathom making a decision like some of the things that people do, like invading countries and, actually, creating huge harm in the world. And I think that actually anyone who does make those decisions, let's be honest, probably faces a lot of trauma, deep down inside somewhere, whether they would admit it or not. So my long answer is absolutely, if you can get to that internal peace state and really validate that, let's just face it, the world would be a substantially better place. And we are at a really challenging time. So I think this cause is great to really champion that thinking.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's, listen, at Peace One Day, we want to create constructive narrative that informs, inspires, and engages people around the fundamental issues of our survival. Mental health is obviously critically important for all the reasons that you've just shared. So I just want to say thank you again, Alex, for supporting Peace One Day. You've done it a number of times with various shows. It's very kind of you, and it allows us to put the kind of messaging out that you and I care so dearly about. So our last question is, if I want to find out about you or connect with JAAQ or follow, where do we go? Where can we find more info?
Super simple. So if it's me personally, I'm Alex Packham on everything. You can just pop that into any search engine or whatever it may be, and lots of ways to contact me will come up. And JAAQ is accessible completely for free, as I say, on JAAQ.app if you're an individual. And if you're a business, just hit JAAQ.app and there's a tab at the top. So hit JAAQ for business and you can work out how you can engage with us from there. But we'd love to work with people. So please get in touch if this topic is passionate to you, it's important to you, or you've got any way, again, of kind of scaling, the positive angle and that early intervention piece around mental health. So yeah, please get in touch.
Alex, best of luck on your journey. And thanks again for today.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Appreciate it.